On February 20, 2009, the then 11-year-old Jordan Brown murdered his father's 26-year-old fiancée Kenzie Houck, who was 8 months pregnant at the time, and her unborn son was also killed. While the soon-to-be mother was sleeping in her bed in the New Beaver, Pennsylvania farmhouse, Brown shot her in the back of the head using a gun given to him by his father. Houck's youngest daughter alerted nearby adults to the situation after Brown had gotten on the school bus. Police arrived later that day to find a shotgun in the house with the smell of burnt gunpowder. Jordan was interviewed by Pennsylvania State Police twice the day of the incident before being arrested the following morning. It was later confirmed that Houck was killed by a youth model Harrington and Richardson 20-gauge shotgun. Prosecutors speculated that Brown killed his stepmother because he was angered by the pending birth of a new sibling and was jealous about the attention his stepsisters received. Initially, Brown was to be tried as an adult but was eventually found guilty of first-degree murder as a juvenile. In 2018, Brown was exonerated as the court determined that the evidence could have been planted by an unknown assailant and thus was insufficient to find him culpable beyond a reasonable doubt. Fascinated with poison from a young age, Young would poison his father, stepmother, younger sister, several classmates, and at one point even himself. He used a poison that made them violently ill. The symptoms included vomiting, diarrhea, and excruciating stomach pain. When he was only 14, in November 1961, Young served his sister Winifred a cup of tea exposed to poison that would later cause her hallucinations. She was taken to the hospital, where doctors came to the conclusion that she had consumed the poisonous Atropa belladonna. Young's father was suspicious of his son, but unable to find anything incriminating in his room. Regardless, he warned his son to stop using chemicals. Young eventually killed his stepmother, and after the 15-year-old was sent to a psychiatrist, the police were brought in. Young landed himself in a psychiatric facility for people who have committed criminal offenses and was diagnosed with a personality disorder. Dubbed the teacup poisoner, he killed a fellow inmate and poisoned several staff members before being released 9 years later, deemed fully recovered. He would eventually land back in prison in the early 1970s to live out the rest of his days, after poisoning at least 7 more people and killing one. When Eric Smith was younger, he was considered a loving and funny boy. That quickly changed as he got older. Smith had been diagnosed with intermittent explosive disorder, a mental disorder that causes individuals to act out violently and unpredictably. It was a rare disorder that was even rarer at Smith's age. Smith was a loner and was often bullied because of his appearance, as he had protruding low-set ears, thick glasses, red hair, and freckles. It seems this led to Smith's suppressed rage, later taken out on his victim, Derek Roby. At age 13, Eric Smith murdered Derek Roby, a 4-year-old boy, after luring him into the woods while they were on their way to the same summer camp. After luring the young boy into the woods, Smith hit him over the head with a rock, strangled him, and sodomized him with a tree limb, which Smith would later say he used to confirm the boy was dead. The body was found within hours after the little boy's mother reported him missing. Within the same week, Smith confessed to his family. He was charged with second-degree murder and is currently in a medium-security prison in New York State. This Canadian serial killer and child rapist showed signs of psychopathy at a young age. By the time he was a teenager, Woodcock was using his bike to wander around the edges of Toronto and select his victims. He would ride his bike and evolve a fantasy in which he led a gang of 500 invisible boys called the Winchester Heights Gang. His foster parents were aware that he spent time wandering around on his bike, but were shocked to discover that Woodcock had been sexually assaulting children. He assaulted many children and would eventually kill 3, all under the age of 10, between 1956 and 1957. The murders were carried out by strangulation. Woodcock would also beat his victims and forcibly insert objects into their privates before killing them. He was caught after being seen cycling away from his last victim and found not guilty by reason of insanity. Woodcock would be sent to a maximum security mental health center. As he seemed less dangerous over time, the man was released to a lower-level facility. In that facility, Woodcock, now going by the name David Michael Kruger, fell in love with a fellow patient who rejected his sexual advances. While out on a weekend pass, Kruger convinced a former lover, Bruce Hamill, to help him kill that man. Hamill and Kruger stabbed Dennis Kerr to death. Immediately after the murder, Kruger reported himself to the police. He was transferred back to the high-security facility, where he passed away 19 years later. In April of 2006, the bodies of Mark and Deborah Richardson and their 8-year-old son were found in their home. The murderers were the Richardsons' 12-year-old daughter, Jasmine, and her 23-year-old boyfriend, Jeremy Steinke, who she had met at a punk rock show that same year. The two had an interest in dark horror and creatures like vampires. Steinke even claimed he was a 300-year-old vampire. He told friends he liked the taste of blood and wore a small vial of blood around his neck. Richardson's parents did not approve of Steinke and punished her for dating him because of the age difference. The pair, who were deeply infatuated, refused to be separated, and so Richardson came up with a plan. She proposed the idea to kill her parents so she and Steinke could finally live together. Hours before the murder, the two had watched Natural Born Killers. During a conversation with an undercover cop while in police custody, Steinke said that the movie was the best love story of all time. Richardson was found guilty of 3 counts of murder in the first degree and sentenced to the maximum allowance for juveniles, 10 years. Steinke received 3 life sentences. It is believed that Richardson is the youngest person to be convicted of multiple murder in Canada. She was released after serving her full sentence in 2016. Reportedly, she has shown genuine remorse for her crimes. Bustamante had a rough childhood, which likely factored heavily into the gruesome crimes that she later committed. When Alyssa was born, her father was imprisoned for assault, while her mother had had several encounters with the law for drug possession and theft. Alyssa's grandparents raised her in the hopes that separating her from her biological parents would help her development. Despite this, Alyssa struggled with depression for much of her life. She was sent to therapists and prescribed Prozac, and while this seemed to help Alyssa for a short period of time, it wasn't enough to solve Alyssa's problems. She had a fascination with pain and death. Her YouTube page described her hobbies as cutting herself and killing people. On October 21, 2009, Alyssa lured her 10-year-old neighbor, Elizabeth Olton, into the woods, claiming that she had a gift for her. Bustamante slit Elizabeth's throat before strangling her and stabbing her in the chest. Bustamante wrote in her diary, "I just fucking killed someone. I strangled them and slit their throat and stabbed them, now they're dead. I don't know how to feel ATM. It was amazing. As soon as you get over the oh my god, I can't do this feeling, it's pretty enjoyable. I'm kinda nervous and shaky though right now. K, I gotta go to church now, lol." Alyssa was tried as an adult and pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. She was sentenced to life in prison with a chance of parole after 30 years. She'll be eligible for parole in 2042.